My wife lied in divorce court to steal my money. Then the evidence exposed her. I found my wife's second phone in the lint trap, and the worst part is I almost put it back. It was a Tuesday, 11:43 p.m., the kind of late where the house feels like it's holding its breath. I was doing laundry because Emma forgot to switch it over again, and I had a 7 a.m. meeting and no clean dress shirts. The dryer thumped, warm air smelling like detergent, and that faint burnt dust thing you only notice in winter. When I pulled the lint screen, something hard clicked against the metal. A black rectangle slid forward like it had been waiting for me. Not my phone, not her regular iPhone that lived in her hand like an extra organ. This one was smaller, older, cheap case, screen spidered at the corner. My first thought was genuinely stupid. Maybe it's one of the neighbor's kids. Then the screen lit up when I accidentally hit the side button. No lock screen photo, no notifications previewed, except one banner that popped up like a slap. You up? I miss you. From a contact saved as M, timestamp, 11:44 p.m. It was so on the nose it felt fake, like my brain was trying to prank itself. My fingers went cold anyway. I stood there in socks on the basement tile, dryer humming behind me, staring at that single sentence, and the little heart emoji that followed it. I shouldn't have opened it. I did. The message thread loaded, and it wasn't one bad decision, it was months of them. Hotel confirmations, a selfie of a man's wrist with the stupidest expensive watch. Can't wait to be inside you. I didn't read the rest because my stomach physically lurched and I slapped the screen off like it was hot. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped it. Upstairs, the TV was still on in the living room, the low murmur of some true crime show Emma always half-watched. She called down, sweet as anything. Babe, you okay? Dryer make that weird noise again? I didn't answer. I walked up the stairs with the phone in my palm like evidence. Like a weapon. Like a live animal. She was on the couch under our gray throw blanket, hair in a loose bun, face washed clean, looking tired in a way I used to want to fix. Her eyes flicked to my hand. Not to my face, to my hand. That tiny tell. What's that? She said, already smiling too quickly. I held it out without a word. She didn't reach for it right away. Her throat moved like she swallowed something sharp. Where did you get that? She asked, and when I said, the dryer, her smile fell apart in slow motion. She sat up, blanket sliding to the floor, and the first real emotion that hit her face wasn't guilt. It was calculation. Okay, she said softly, like she was talking to a panicked dog. Put it down. Let's not do this like you always do. The phrase landed wrong, like she'd been practicing it. Then, before I could even form a sentence, she added, if you start yelling, I'm calling someone. I'm not doing the controlling thing tonight. And she reached for her own phone on the coffee table, with a steadiness that scared me more than if she'd screamed. She hovered her thumb over her phone like she was about to hit a panic button, and I realized she'd rehearsed this version of the night. I'm not yelling, I said, because my voice sounded too steady, like it belonged to somebody else. Whose phone is that, Emma? Her eyes flicked to the hallway, the front door. The camera we'd installed after a package got stolen last summer. You always make everything an interrogation, she said, soft and tired and perfectly calibrated. It's for work. I didn't want you freaking out about me having clients call late. Your work is marketing emails, I said, and it came out sharper than I meant. She flinched, just slightly, and then she leaned into it. There it is, she whispered. That tone, the way you talk to me. She took a breath like she was about to cry, then didn't. You're doing the controlling thing again. You found my phone. You're standing over me. You're demanding answers. I found it in the dryer, I said. And there are hotel receipts and messages. I didn't say the line I'd half read. I couldn't. Her jaw tightened, and for the first time I saw something like actual fear flash across her face. Not fear of me, fear of losing the story. She stood up, slow, keeping the coffee table between us. Give it to me, she said. No. Give it to me, Mark. Her voice got firm, and then she added quieter. If you keep it, that's theft. The word hit like a weird little legal landmine. I pulled out my own phone with my free hand and tapped record. Not dramatic, just a small red dot. I'm recording because you just said theft, I said. I'm not touching you. I'm not blocking you. I want you to say what's happening. Her nostrils flared. Wow, she breathed, like I'd proven her point. This is exactly what I mean. You always have to win. She glanced at my phone and then at the camera again. Stop recording. It's coercive. It's protection, I said, and I hated that I even knew to say that. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. Protection from what? From your wife. God. She sat back down abruptly, hands pressed to her forehead. For a second she looked small, like the girl I met in grad school, who used to steal fries off my plate and say sorry after. Then her phone buzzed, and the sound snapped the moment in half. A text banner lit her screen. Did he find out? She grabbed it too fast, but I'd seen enough. She looked up at me, and I swear the calculation was back, neat as a spreadsheet. You need to leave tonight, she said, for both of us. You're kicking me out of my house? I asked. I'm asking you to de-escalate, she replied, and the phrasing made my skin crawl because it sounded like therapy speak weaponized. I walked to the entryway without trusting myself near the couch again, grabbed my keys and my work bag, and when I turned back, she was already typing furiously, shoulders tense, phone angled away like a shield. My own phone vibrated in my pocket as I reached the door. 3 texts in a row from Emma's sister. Are you okay? Emma says you're scaring her. Please don't do anything stupid. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot for a full 20 minutes, engine off, watching my breath fog the windshield like I was hiding from my own life. It was 12:26 a.m. when I finally texted Emma's sister back. I'm fine, I'm not scaring anyone. She's lying. Immediately, 3 dots, then nothing. I opened my recording and listened to it with the volume barely up. My voice low, Emma's voice calm, the way she'd said, controlling, like it was a diagnosis. I screenshot the message thread on the burner phone as fast as my shaking fingers could manage. Hotel confirmation emails, a calendar invite that said, lunch, repeating every Thursday, and a photo of my wife's hand with her wedding ring turned inward. That detail made me nauseous in a way the explicit messages hadn't, like she'd been trying to keep some part of being married intact even while she was doing this. I didn't go home. I went to a cheap business hotel off the highway, the kind that smells like lemon cleaner and old carpet, and I put the burner phone in the room safe like it was radioactive. At 1:11 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. This is Officer Patel, the voice said, brisk but not unkind. We're doing a welfare check. Your wife called saying you left the residence agitated and she's concerned you might return. My mouth went dry. I'm at a hotel, I said. I have proof she's cheating, and she's already telling people I'm abusive. There was a pause, paper shuffling. Sir, she said you've been emotionally abusive for a while, and you threatened to ruin her tonight. I almost laughed because of how cleanly she'd framed it. I didn't threaten her, I said, and then, because my brain had clicked into survival mode, I added, I recorded the interaction. I can provide it. Another pause, and his tone softened by a fraction. I'm not asking for that right now. I'm advising you to stay away tonight, okay? Let things cool down. After I hung up, I stared at the little hotel desk, the laminated rules about towel stains, and I Googled divorce attorneys like I was cramming for an exam I never signed up for. At 9:02 a.m., after 2 hours of half sleep, I called the first firm with good reviews, and a receptionist transferred me to a legal assistant named Claire, who spoke like she'd already handled 100 mornings like mine. She didn't gasp or scold or sympathize too hard. She just asked, "Do you have documentation?" And when I said yes, she told me, "Don't communicate with her except in writing, and don't go back to the house alone." I booked the earliest consult she had, Thursday at 3:30, and the second I hung up, my email pinged with a subject line from an unfamiliar address, Notice of Temporary Restraining Order Hearing. I read the subject line 3 times before my brain accepted that it was real and not some spammy phishing thing with a scary title. The email was from a local process server company, all business fonts and scanned PDFs, and attached was a petition for a temporary protective order filed by Emma. The allegations sat there in black ink like they'd always been true. Respondent exhibits controlling behavior. Respondent monitors petitioner's communications. Respondent has threatened financial ruin. And then the one that made my ears ring. On January 5th, respondent blocked petitioner's exit and raised his fist. I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. My fists were on my knees, open, palms up, like I was proving something to an invisible jury. I hadn't touched her. I hadn't blocked anything. I left the house. I left because she told me to de-escalate. It felt like she'd taken that moment, the tiny breath between my shock and my anger, and poured concrete into it. The hearing was set for Monday at 6 days. I called the firm back immediately, hands numb, and Claire picked up on the second ring. I didn't even say hello, right? I just said, she filed for a restraining order. She's lying. There was a beat where she didn't fill the silence with platitudes. Just let me get my breathing under control. Okay, she said finally, crisp. We need the documents. Email them to me right now. Do you have the recording you mentioned? Yes. Do not send it to her. Do not send it to anyone else. Save it in 2 places. Also, where are you staying? The question was practical, not nosy, but it made my throat tighten anyway because it was the first time someone in this mess sounded like they were on my side without turning it into drama. A hotel. Good. Stay there. If you have personal belongings you need, we'll talk about a civil standby. And Mark, she said my name like a stop sign. No matter what she texts you, don't respond emotionally. Assume everything you write gets read out loud in court. As soon as we got off the phone, my own phone lit up like a slot machine. Emma, you humiliated me. Emma, you recorded me without consent? Emma, I'm scared of you when you get like that. I didn't answer. I screenshot everything. Then my mom called, voice tight, asking why Emma had called her crying about Mark's temper. I told my mom I couldn't explain over the phone, and she said, "So you're not denying it?" That stung in a way I wasn't ready for. Later that afternoon, I went to the bank to separate my accounts like every divorce blog said to do, and the teller looked at me with pity when she asked, "Reason for the new account?" I almost said, "Because my wife is trying to erase me," but I just mumbled something about personal. When I checked my joint account online in the hotel room, a transfer had already been initiated. $4,500 moved to a new savings account I didn't recognize, with the memo line security. My fingers hovered over the mouse, and I realized Emma hadn't just filed papers. She'd started moving pieces. I didn't sleep that night so much as I blinked through it in chunks, waking up every hour to check my bank app like it was an EKG. The transfer was still pending, which meant there was a window, tiny, cruel, but real. At 7:58 a.m., I called the bank fraud line and tried to keep my voice level while explaining that a large transfer had been initiated from a joint account without my consent during an active marital dispute. The rep asked if I suspected elder abuse. I almost laughed. No, I said. I suspect divorce. She put me on hold with chirpy music that made me want to throw my phone. When she came back, she said because it was a joint account, Emma technically had authority. Unless there's a court order, she added, and the words felt like a door slamming. I emailed Claire screenshots anyway. The transfer, the memo, the account number fragment. She replied within 10 minutes. This helps. Do not confront her. We'll request an emergency financial restraining order at the hearing. The phrase financial restraining order sounded like something that should already exist by default in a marriage, but apparently it only becomes real once you're already bleeding. At 10:17 a.m., Emma's attorney emailed me directly. Bold move, informing me that all communication should go through counsel and that my pattern of coercive control would be addressed at the upcoming hearing. Attached was a proposed temporary order. Emma gets exclusive use of the marital home, temporary sole access to our joint funds for safety, and I would be barred from contacting her except through a parenting app. We didn't even have kids, but she'd already dropped me into a template like a placeholder villain. I forwarded it to Claire. My hands were steady now, but my chest wasn't. I felt like I was watching a version of myself get described by strangers. And the most terrifying part was how believable it would sound to someone who didn't know me. That afternoon, I drove to the house anyway. Not to go in. Claire's voice was in my head like a seatbelt, but to sit across the street and look at it. Our porch light was on. The kitchen window had a new curtain pulled halfway down, like she'd rearranged the set. A man's car was in the driveway, not one I recognized. My vision tunneled and I had to grip the steering wheel until the leather creaked. I didn't take pictures. I didn't honk. I left because I couldn't afford to be the guy in her story. On the way back to the hotel, a mutual friend, Jason, texted, "Dude, what's going on? Emma says you were tracking her and she's filing something. Are you okay?" It wasn't anger in his tone. It was that careful distance people use when they're trying to decide if you're safe to be around. I typed and deleted 6 responses before sending, "I'm okay. There are false allegations. I'll explain when I can." He replied with a single thumbs up, and I felt my social life shrink by another inch. That night, I sat at the hotel desk and organized evidence like it was a second job. Screenshots labeled with dates, the recording backed up to a thumb drive, the burner phone wrapped in a sock inside my suitcase. At 11:52 p.m., my email pinged again. Emma had uploaded supporting exhibits to the court portal. The thumbnail preview showed a photo of a bruise on an arm I didn't recognize, and my stomach dropped as I clicked open the PDF. The PDF took a second to load, like the internet itself wanted to give me one last chance to not see it. Then it appeared. Exhibit A, photographs. Exhibit B, text messages. Exhibit C, narrative statement. The bruise photo was first, a close-up of a forearm with a purple bloom near the wrist, taken under bathroom lighting. No face, no identifying mark. Just skin and injury. The kind of image that makes your brain fill in the rest automatically. Under it was another angle, then a third. My hands went slick on the mouse. I scrolled fast, too fast until I hit the text messages. They were cropped screenshots, the kind where you can't see the contact name, just gray bubbles and timestamps. A message labeled as "Me" said, "If you walk out, I swear you'll regret it." Another, "You're nothing without my money." I stared at those like they were in another language. I have never typed the phrase, "you're nothing," to anyone in my life. My actual texts to Emma, even when we fought, were boring and logistical and occasionally petty in a passive way I'm not proud of. Like, "I guess I'll eat dinner alone." These were cinematic villain lines, which made them dangerous because they were easy to believe. I took a breath and forced myself to slow down. Claire's voice. "Assume everything you write gets read out loud in court." So, I treated the exhibits like a puzzle, not an insult. I opened my iMessage history and searched keywords. Regret, money, nothing. Nothing. I checked my SMS backups. Nothing. Then I noticed something that made my heartbeat change pace. In her screenshots, the timestamp font looked slightly off, and the battery icon was on the right, even though in most of her iPhone screenshots, it's on the left, depending on model, OS, whatever. It wasn't proof, but it was a thread to pull. I downloaded the PDF, saved it twice, and emailed Claire. "These exhibits look manipulated. Also, the bruise photo could be anyone. Please advise." She replied with one line that made my scalp prickle. "Do not panic. We can subpoena originals, chuck metadata. Also, do you have your own text from that time period?" as if she already knew what I was thinking. The only way to fight a fake screenshot is with the real thread in full context. Over the next 2 days, I became a person who lived by timestamps. I exported entire conversations. I pulled my cell carrier logs, the ones that show numbers and times even if they don't show content. I requested my iCloud data download and watched the progress bar like it was a life raft. Emma kept texting anyway, knowing I couldn't respond without it being twisted. "You always do this," she wrote at 2:14 a.m. "You push and push until I break, then you act calm." At 6:03 a.m., "My lawyer says you can't harass me." At 6:04 a.m., "Stop trying to make me look crazy." That one made me laugh out loud in the empty hotel room, a harsh sound that died immediately because it wasn't funny. Sunday night, the night before the hearing, Claire called me after hours. "We got something?" she said, and her tone was controlled but charged. "Emma's bruise photo appears on a public stock image site from 2019. Same angle, same bathroom tile pattern. We're confirming. But Mark, if this holds, it changes the posture of everything." I looked down at my hands, at the little half moons my nails had carved into my palms from holding myself together, and I said, "So she forged evidence." Claire exhaled once. "It looks like it, and the judge is going to have questions." Court was a beige room with bad acoustics and a flag that looked tired, and I hated how normal it all felt for something that could wreck my entire life. I sat at the respondent's table in the same suit I wore to client pitches, hands folded like I was trying to convince the universe I was harmless. Emma sat across from me with her attorney, hair brushed, eyes slightly red, clutching a folder like a lifeline. She didn't look at me until the judge walked in, and then she looked right through me, like I was furniture. Our attorney, Mr. Delaney, leaned toward me and murmured, "Answer only what's asked. Slow." Claire was behind him at the counsel table, laptop open, calm as if we were prepping a lease agreement instead of my character assassination. When the judge called our case, Emma's attorney stood and started painting me as a man who exerts coercive control and uses finances to intimidate. Emma nodded at the right moments, small tremors in her hands, a performance so restrained it almost worked on me for a second. Then she testified. She said I'd monitored her location for years. She said I didn't allow her to see friends without approval. She said the night I found the phone, I stood in the doorway with my fist raised, and she thought I was going to hit her. The judge asked, "Did he strike you?" Emma paused, just a beat too long, then said, "Not that night, but he has grabbed me before." My stomach flipped like I was about to throw up in public. My attorney stood, voice steady. "Your Honor, we have evidence that at least one of petitioner's submitted exhibits is not authentic." Emma's attorney objected immediately, but Delaney kept going, handing the clerk a printed page. "This is a reverse image search result, and URL history showing Exhibit A, the bruise photo, appears on a stock photo site dated 2019. Emma's face changed fast, not into guilt, into anger, like she'd been accused of something unfair. "That's not," she started, and the judge cut her off with a look. "Ma'am, you'll answer when asked." Claire slid something to Delaney, another printout. Her expression unreadable, but eyes sharp. Delaney added, "We also request the court order petitioner to provide original files and device metadata for all screenshots submitted as Exhibit B." The judge leaned forward, flipping pages, the paper crackle suddenly the loudest sound in the room. Emma's attorney tried to pivot, saying it didn't matter if one photo was illustrative, but the judge's eyebrows went up at that word like it tasted bad. "Illustrative," he repeated. Emma's attorney corrected himself, stumbled, and the judge's patience thinned right there in real time. When it was my turn, I didn't give a speech. I answered questions, I stated facts, I said I left the home, I said I recorded the interaction because she threatened to call someone and used legal language like theft. Delaney played a short clip of the recording, my voice calm, Emma saying, "Let's not do this like you always do," and then, "If you start yelling, I'm calling someone." The judge listened without reacting, which somehow felt worse. Then he asked Emma, "Why did you say, like you always do?" Emma swallowed. "Because he interrogates." The judge nodded once, then asked, "And the second phone?" Emma's attorney objected again. Overruled. Emma's eyes flicked toward me, not pleading, not apologizing, measuring. "It was private," she said, "for safety." The judge's pen stopped. "For safety from what?" he asked, and in that one quiet question, I heard the floor shift under her story. Emma's mouth opened like she was going to pull the right answer out of thin air, but nothing elegant came. From him," she said, and the judge's expression didn't change, which somehow felt like a bad sign for her, not me. Delaney didn't pounce. He waited, letting the silence do the work. The judge asked, "How does a second phone provide safety from a spouse you live with?" Emma's attorney jumped in about privacy and autonomy, trying to reframe it as modern marriage stuff, but the judge held up a hand. "I asked the petitioner," he said. Emma's cheeks reddened. "Because he checks everything," she said. "He's always asking who I'm texting, why I'm late, what I'm spending." I almost interrupted, but Delaney's hand brushed my sleeve, a warning. The judge looked down at the proposed temporary order, then back up. "Ma'am, Do you have any police reports? Medical records? Prior protective orders? Emma shook her head and her hair moved like a curtain being pulled closed. No, because I was scared, she said, voice tightening. That's how it works. The judge nodded once, slow, like he'd heard that line before, and knew it was sometimes true and sometimes a script. Delaney stood. Your Honor, we also have evidence of financial transfers initiated after the filing, including a $42,500 transfer labeled security to an account unknown to respondent. Emma's attorney tried to object on relevance. The judge overruled again, eyes narrowed now. You moved marital funds after filing? He asked Emma directly. For safety, she repeated, and it sounded weaker the second time, like a word losing meaning. The judge ordered the parties to exchange full financial disclosures within 10 days and issued a temporary mutual no-contact order, not the one-sided one Emma wanted, plus a directive that neither party could dissipate marital assets. Then he turned to Emma's exhibits. Given questions about authenticity, I'm ordering petitioner to provide originals of all electronic evidence and devices used to create these exhibits for forensic review if necessary, he said, and I felt Claire exhale behind us like she'd been holding her breath since sunrise. Emma's face tightened. For a flicker, she looked like she might cry for real, but then her gaze slid to me again, hard and flat, and I understood. She wasn't going to fold. She was going to switch tactics. Outside the courtroom, in the hallway that smelled like old coffee, her attorney cornered Delaney with a forced smile and said, Let's keep this civil, like we'd been the ones bringing stock photos to a protective order hearing. Emma walked past me without stopping, shoulder nearly brushing mine, and hissed under her breath, You're doing exactly what I said you would. Then she was gone, heels tapping like punctuation. In the parking lot, I finally let myself shake. Claire approached with her laptop bag, professional distance intact, and handed me a printed checklist. Here's what we need from you this week, she said. Passwords, account statements, your phone records, and, Mark, if she contacts you, save it. Don't respond. Her tone stayed even, but her eyes softened in a way that didn't feel like pity. Okay, I managed. My phone buzzed as if summoned. A notification from the joint account. The $42,500 transfer had cleared. The moment the transfer cleared, it stopped being a scary pending number and became an absence I could feel in my teeth. I called the bank again, sat on hold again, and got the same polite answer. Joint account, joint authority. Sorry, sir. When I told Delaney, he didn't swear or sigh. He just said, we move fast, like he was pushing a chess clock. Claire emailed me a one-page asset preservation packet with highlighted sections and a list of what to pull, last 12 months of statements, any retirement accounts, Venmo history, PayPal, credit cards, even rewards points, because apparently people get petty enough to weaponize airline miles. I forwarded what I had, then drove to the firm, with a folder like I was auditioning for a part I didn't want. In the conference room, Delaney laid out the emergency motion, freeze remaining marital funds, compel return of the transfer into a trust account, and sanctions if the court found she'd moved money in violation of the judge's order. Claire sat at the end of the table, typing quietly, pausing only to slide me sticky notes that said things like, include screenshot of cleared transfer, and attach hearing transcript excerpt. She didn't touch my shoulder or say, I'm sorry, in that soft way people do when they want you to break down for them. She treated the chaos like something we could inventory. It helped more than sympathy would have. Is she going to get in trouble? I asked Delaney, and he gave the only honest lawyer answer. If the court believes she acted in bad faith, yes. Then he looked at me hard. But she's going to claim she did it because she feared you. You understand that's the narrative. Like I didn't. On the way out, Claire walked me to the lobby because Delaney got pulled into another call. You're doing everything right, she said, then immediately corrected herself into safer language. You're doing everything that helps your case. I almost smiled, and it felt wrong in my face. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. Email from Emma's attorney. Subject line, emergency motion, digital harassment. Attached was a new affidavit from Emma claiming I accessed her private accounts, installed monitoring software, and illegally recorded her without consent, and at the bottom, in bold, a request for an ex parte order to seize my devices for forensic imaging. I stood in the parking lot with the PDF open, wind cutting through my coat, and watched my hands start shaking again because now the fight wasn't just about money or reputation. It was about whether I'd be treated like a criminal before I even got to speak. I forwarded the affidavit to Claire with the subject line, "What the hell?" Then immediately regretted the phrasing and sent a second email that just said, "Please advise, she's requesting device seizure." Claire called within 5 minutes. "Breathe," she said, which was the closest she'd come to sounding human instead of legal human. An ex parte request doesn't mean it's granted. It means she's asking without notice. We respond fast. I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, staring at my laptop like it might confess something. "I didn't hack anything," I said. "I don't even know how." "I believe you," she replied, then corrected herself again, gently. "What matters is, we can prove you didn't. Do you have shared passwords? Like, did you ever log into her email for bills?" That hit because, yes, years ago, before things got weird, We'd shared everything. Netflix, utilities, the Apple family plan. Her iPad had my fingerprint on it because she once wanted me to set up her calendar. Normal marriage stuff that suddenly looked like a toolkit for a crime. We shared an iCloud family plan, I said. I have access to Find My for her devices because she insisted after she lost her phone at Target. Claire made a small sound like she was already typing that into a response. Okay, that's important context. It's not monitoring software if it's a shared feature you both opted into. Also, stop logging into anything of hers now, even if you technically can. I'm not, I said. Good. And the recording, state law matters, but even if she claims it's illegal, family courts care about context. It's not a wiretap operation. It's you documenting a conversation where she threatened to call police. I heard papers rustling. Delaney's filing an opposition today. We'll also ask for a neutral forensic examiner if anything gets imaged, not her hand-picked expert. The word expert made me picture some guy in a polo shirt scrolling through my photos in a lab, while Emma nodded solemnly. My stomach clenched. That afternoon, a sheriff's deputy did show up to the hotel lobby. Not with handcuffs, but with a calm, practiced voice. Mr. Hart, he asked, you've been served. He handed me a stack. Emma's motion, her affidavit, and, this was new, a request for temporary spousal support based on economic disparity and emotional distress. Emotional distress now had a dollar amount. In the elevator back up, I watched my reflection in the mirrored walls. Unshaved, eyes rimmed red, tie I'd put on out of habit, like I was going to work instead of war. I opened my phone and saw Emma had also emailed my HR department from her personal account, attaching the protective order petition and writing, I'm concerned for workplace safety. HR hadn't replied yet, but I could already feel the shift. Colleagues reading, whispering, deciding. I called my boss and said, I need to tell you something before you hear it from anyone else. And as I explained in clipped sentences, I heard my own voice get smaller, like the lie was pressing the air out of me. When I hung up, Claire texted, not an email, a text, which felt urgent. Judge denied ex parte seizure, set for hearing with notice. We have a week. Also, we pulled something on M. Call me when you can. Claire didn't make me chase the point when I called her. She just said, M isn't a mystery, and I heard the click of her keyboard like teeth. His name is Miles Redford. He's not a client. He's the regional sales director at your wife's company's biggest vendor. Married, 2 kids. Also, there's a corporate policy about fraternization with partners. My brain snagged on the word married, not because it made it worse, everything was already on fire, but because it made it comprehensible. This wasn't some random fling she fell into. This was a whole second life with meetings and lunches and a man who wore an expensive watch and still went home to help with homework. How do you know? I asked, and I hated how hoarse I sounded, like I'd been yelling even when I hadn't. Public LinkedIn, corporate directory leak from last year, and his wife's social media, Claire said. Then added quickly, we didn't contact anyone, we just identified. Delaney wants to subpoena her phone records and the vendor's travel reimbursements. If she used work accounts, there's discoverable stuff. I stared at the hotel wall, where the previous guest had scratched something into the paint near the desk. A tiny scar. So, Emma's going to burn him too, I said. Or he burns her, Claire replied, professional and unsentimental. Either way, it affects leverage. Leverage. That word again. Like my marriage had been reduced to physics. 20 minutes later, I was in an HR conference room at my office, sitting across from a woman in a blazer who kept saying, we're here to support you, while sliding a document toward me labeled Administrative Leave Pending Investigation. I wanted to argue that there was nothing to investigate, that a petition isn't a conviction, but Delaney had warned me not to do anything reactive. So I kept my hands visible on the table and said, I can provide court documents showing the judge denied the emergency requests, like I was negotiating my own innocence. When I got back to the hotel, Emma had emailed again through her attorney, attaching a settlement proposal that looked generous until you read the fine print. She'd keep the house, half my retirement, and I'd pay support for 2 years to stabilize. In exchange, she'd withdraw allegations and keep matters private. It was the first time she'd admitted, even indirectly, that the accusations were a tool she could choose to put down. I forwarded it to Claire, and she called once, voice low. Don't respond, she said, but keep that. It's useful. Outside my door, someone knocked. 2 sharp raps, then a pause, and through the peephole I saw Emma's silhouette in the hallway light, standing there alone like she owned the air between us. I didn't open the door. I stood there with my hand on the latch anyway, like some part of me still thought this was a normal fight, where you talk until one of you says sorry, and you both sleep. Mark, Emma said through the wood, voice careful, not loud enough for the hallway to hear. Please. I backed away and sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my palm, thumb hovering over record like a reflex now. You shouldn't be here, I said, and my voice came out flatter than I expected. You filed a no-contact order. Mutual, she corrected immediately, like she was editing my phrasing. I'm not contacting you, I'm checking you're not doing something stupid. I almost laughed again, the same humorless bark. because she'd already planted that phrase with her sister, with the officer, with my HR. Emma, leave, I said. Talk to your lawyer. There was a pause, then the tiniest shift of tone, like she'd decided the soft approach wasn't working. You're ruining my life, she said. You know that, right? You're dragging this out because you can't stand losing. I didn't start this, I said, and I hated that it sounded like a kid in a playground. On the other side of the door, she exhaled, a little shaky. I didn't want it to be like this, she said, and for half a second, I heard the real her under the strategy, the exhausted, scared part that used to crawl into my hoodie when her anxiety spiked. I made a mistake, she continued, and then, like she couldn't help herself, she added, but you don't get to punish me forever. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk, I said, and my throat tightened on the word forever. You're accusing me of things that didn't happen. Silence. Then, if you just sign the agreement, I'll make it stop. The hallway light under the door felt suddenly too bright. So, it's a deal, I said softly. You're trading accusations for money. I'm trading peace, she snapped, and the snap was the most honest sound she'd made all week. I hit record. I didn't announce it. I just let my phone capture her voice and mine, and the dead air between, because Claire had said assume everything gets read out loud, and I was done trusting anyone's interpretation. Emma, I said, keeping it even, please leave my hotel. You're violating the order. Her heels scuffed the carpet, like she'd shifted her weight. You always were so calm when you wanted to look right, she muttered, and then her voice went softer again, almost pleading. Mark, I'm scared too. Then stop lying, I said. Another pause, then the sound of her phone vibrating, and I imagined her glancing at it, checking what story she was supposed to tell next. Fine, she said finally, clipped. Enjoy your little war. Her footsteps retreated, quick and sharp, and I waited until the elevator dinged before I let myself breathe. My phone buzzed immediately. Claire, again, a text. We received Emma's originals. They're not originals. The PDF metadata shows it was generated yesterday at 2:03 p.m. by an app that edits screenshots. Delaney is filing motion for sanctions. Also, Miles' wife just called the office, asking why her husband's name is in our filings. The next hearing wasn't the dramatic kind where people shout. It was the administrative kind that quietly decides who gets believed for the rest of the case. Delaney had me in his office at 7:30 a.m., going over what he called the timeline of fabrication, which sounded unreal until you saw it laid out. Emma's exhibit PDF generated the day after she filed, the screenshot editing app signature in the metadata, the stock bruise image sourced from a site dated years earlier, and my carrier log showing no messages matching her cropped me bubbles. Claire sat beside him with 2 monitors and a stack of tabs open like she was piloting an aircraft, and every time I drifted into anger, she brought me back with a calm, stick to the date, Mark, or that's opinion, we need fact. In court, Emma's attorney tried to salvage it by calling the exhibits compilations and saying Emma had been confused and overwhelmed, but the judge wasn't in the mood for soft words. He held up the printout of the stock image page and asked Emma directly, "Did you submit this as evidence of an injury caused by the respondent?" Emma's face went pale, then flushed. She started with, "I," and looked at her lawyer like he could hand her a sentence. The judge waited. "I was scared," she said finally, "and it wasn't a confession. It was a dodge." "That isn't an answer," the judge said, and the room got so quiet I could hear someone's pen clicking behind me. Delaney requested sanctions, attorney's fees, an order returning dissipated funds, and a referral for perjury consideration based on knowingly submitted false evidence. Emma's lawyer objected like it was a personal insult. The judge overruled like he'd done it 1,000 times and was tired of having to. When Emma testified again, her story shifted in small, fatal ways. She hadn't said she was hit. She said she felt threatened. The bruise wasn't hers, but representative. The texts were summaries. The judge's mouth tightened. "This court does not accept representative evidence," he said, and then, looking down at his notes, "and it does not accept deliberate deception." He dismissed the restraining order petition with prejudice, ordered Emma to reimburse a portion of my legal fees, and issued a temporary order to return the $4,200 to a trust account, pending final division. Then he paused, eyes on Emma, and said, "I am referring this matter to the appropriate authorities for review of false statements under oath." Emma's shoulders sagged like someone cut a string. In the hallway afterward, she didn't look triumphant or even furious. She looked cornered, like a person who'd sprinted too far on a lie and suddenly saw the cliff. Claire handed me the stamped order copies, her hands steady. "This is a big shift," she said, careful, professional, but there was a flicker of relief in her eyes that matched the way my lungs finally felt usable again. My phone buzzed before we reached the elevator, HR, asking for an urgent call, and as I answered, Claire's email notification chimed on her screen. I caught a glimpse of the subject line over her shoulder, police detective request, statement or exhibit fabrication. HR didn't apologize exactly, but the tone of the call changed the moment I emailed them. The stamped dismissal, and the judge's order about fabricated evidence. The investigator cleared his throat and said, "We'll be closing the matter?" Like it was a file that had simply reached the end of its folder. Not a month of people, looking at me differently in elevators. When I hung up, I realized my shoulders had been up around my ears for weeks. Delaney sent me to meet a detective at a small office in the courthouse annex, the kind with fluorescent lights that make everyone look slightly guilty. The detective wasn't theatrical. He slid a recorder across the table and asked me to describe, in order, what happened the night I found the phone and what communications I'd had since. I kept my answers clipped the way Claire trained me. Dates, words, timestamps. When he asked, "Do you think she believed what she was claiming?" I said the first honest thing that came to mind. I think she was scared of losing, and she decided fear was a better story than cheating. He nodded like he'd heard that exact sentence before from different mouths. The fallout started spreading sideways. Emma's company put her on leave, pending review. Miles' LinkedIn went dark overnight, and 2 days later, his wife emailed Delaney demanding we keep her family out of it, which was brutal, considering Emma had already dragged mine into it. Then came the mediation session. No robes, no flags, just stale coffee and a mediator who kept saying, "Let's be practical." Emma showed up looking thinner, makeup rushed, eyes sharp with exhaustion. She didn't meet my gaze until the mediator mentioned the court-ordered return of the $4,500, and then she looked straight at me like I'd stolen something from her, instead of the other way around. Her attorney did most of the talking now. Quieter, less swagger. The offer changed. Sell the house, split the equity, each keep our own retirement, no support either direction, mutual non-disparagement, and she'd withdraw the last of her claims in writing. Delaney leaned toward me and whispered, "This is as close to a clean exit as we'll get without trial." My mouth wanted to say no out of spite, but my body wanted air. I agreed. Afterward, in the hallway, Emma stopped a few feet away, not close enough to violate anything, and said, "I didn't think it would go this far." But it wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. I didn't give her comfort or rage. I just said, "Neither did I," and kept walking. Back at the firm, Claire handed me the final decree draft for review, pages warm from the printer, and for the first time in months, her smile flickered like it belonged to her, not the job. "Signing is next week," she said. "Once the judge enters it, you're legally done." And the way she said done hit me in the chest like the word could be a door. The day we signed, it was raining the kind of rain that doesn't look dramatic, just relentless. And I remember thinking it matched the whole process. No lightning, just months of damp misery soaking through everything. The judge didn't do a speech. He glanced at the decree, asked if we understood, then stamped it with a dull thud that somehow sounded louder than the courtroom door. Emma stood a few feet away, hands clenched around her purse strap, jaw tight like she was holding herself together with muscle. When it was over, she didn't turn to me, but she did say, to the air, "I'm sorry." And I honestly don't know if it was for the cheating, the lies, or the fact that the lie didn't work. The consequences kept moving, even without my input. Her company terminated her after their investigation, cited policy violations with a vendor. Miles resigned 2 weeks later, and his wife's social media went nuclear for a while before it all disappeared. The DA's office offered Emma a diversion program tied to the false evidence submission. Classes, community service, restitution of my fees per the court order, and a formal statement she had to sign acknowledging the exhibits weren't authentic. It wasn't prison movie justice, but it was real, public, and it followed her like a shadow she earned. My funds were returned through the trust account, the house sold, the equity split, and I moved into a small rental that smelled like fresh paint and possibility, and nothing else. The firm sent me a closing letter, Delaney's signature neat at the bottom, and a separate note from Claire that was strictly professional. "Congratulations on final judgment. Please contact us if you need certified copies." And that was it. Clean lines, proper boundaries, case closed. 2 weeks later, I ran into her by accident at the coffee shop across from the courthouse, both of us reaching for the same sleeve of lids like we'd timed it. She smiled. Not flirty, just tired. "How's post-divorce life?" she asked, and it was the first time anyone said it like it was a real phase, not a scandal. I told her the truth. Quiet. Weirdly quiet. She nodded, then said, "I'm not working your file anymore," like she needed to say it out loud, and I said, "I know." We talked for 10 minutes about nothing. Bad rain, good bagels, how court printers always jam. And when we said goodbye, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Steady. That night I texted her from my personal number, one sentence, no legal words. "If you ever want to grab coffee when you're off the clock, I'd like that." Her reply came at 9:14 p.m. "I'd like that too. Saturday?" And I stared at the screen until the letter stopped looking like a hallucination and started looking like a plan.